Owner of the Salinas Coca-Cola distribution site confirming Monday that 81 jobs at the plant are in jeopardy when the plant closes.
A closure that wasn't supposed to happen. When a Coca-Cola bottling plant shuts down in California, it isn't just another business headline. It's a signal. In the span of months, long-standing facilities closed with little warning. Workers were told to look elsewhere. Local leaders scrambled for answers. And the state's most powerful brand names suddenly became symbols in a much larger debate. This wasn't about one plant or even one company. It was about whether California's economic model, once considered unbeatable, can still hold on to the businesses that helped build it. A surprise shutdown and a growing pattern. The announcement came quietly. Reyes Coca-Cola Bottling, one of the largest beverage distributors in the state, revealed plans to consolidate operations, folding a local facility into a larger hub miles away. Roughly a dozen workers were told their jobs might disappear. Just weeks earlier, a Coca-Cola bottling facility in Napa County shut down entirely. 135 jobs vanished overnight. For local communities, these weren't abstract economic trends. They were paychecks, mortgages, and futures thrown into question. For state leaders, the closures raised an uncomfortable issue. Was this the beginning of something bigger? California's business reputation under the microscope. For decades, California cultivated an image as the ultimate destination for business, deep talent pools, unmatched consumer markets, and global influence. But in recent years, that reputation has been tested. Companies now openly weigh whether the benefits of staying outweigh the costs. Taxes, regulatory complexity, energy prices, and labor rules have become part of nearly every boardroom discussion involving California operations. Public debate often paints the picture of a mass corporate exodus. Headlines suggest companies are fleeing en masse, taking jobs and investment with them. The reality, however, is more nuanced, what the data actually shows. According to research from the Public Policy Institute of California, the number of corporate headquarters leaving the state is far smaller than popular narratives suggest. Between 2018 and 2024, California experienced a net loss of just 11 headquarters. Most were smaller firms with fewer than 500 employees. Many relocated not across the country, but to neighboring states. Texas, Nevada, and Florida frequently top destination lists, driven by lower taxes and simpler regulatory frameworks. Critically, California's rate of corporate churn mirrors the national average. Even as some firms leave, others arrive, particularly in technology, biotechnology, and advanced research. The story is not one of collapse, but of selective pressure. Manufacturing feels the pressure. First, while headquarters data tells one story, manufacturing tells another. Manufacturing's share of California's gross domestic product has steadily declined from roughly 12% in 2010 to about 9% by 2024. Food and beverage plants have been particularly vulnerable. Automation, global competition, and shifting consumer demand play major roles. But rising energy costs and increasingly complex compliance requirements add weight to every investment decision. For companies operating on thin margins, manufacturing in California is becoming harder to justify, especially when alternatives exist. Coca-Cola's global shift away from ownership. The Coca-Cola closures cannot be understood in isolation from the company's global strategy. In 2025, Coca-Cola accelerated a long-term pivot toward an asset-light model. Instead of owning bottling plants and distribution infrastructure, the company increasingly relies on independent bottlers and partners. This shift allows Coca-Cola to focus on brand management, marketing, and product innovation, while outsourcing capital-intensive manufacturing. The results are financially compelling. Operating margins hover near 30%. Free cash flow is projected in the range of $9 to $10 billion. But the human cost is real. Worldwide, the restructuring eliminated more than 2,000 jobs and cut roughly 200 underperforming brands. Iconic names disappeared. Facilities closed. Communities absorbed the impact. Why bottlers are consolidating. Reyes Coca-Cola Bottling illustrates how this strategy plays out on the ground. As one of California's largest beverage bottlers, Reyes operates dozens of facilities across the state. In early 2025, the company began consolidating operations, issuing formal notices for plant closures and job eliminations. In Modesto, more than 100 positions were cut. Other sites were merged into larger hubs. From a business standpoint, consolidation reduces overhead, improves logistics efficiency, and minimizes exposure to regulatory risk. From a community standpoint, it feels like abandonment. The political backlash begins. Closures like these quickly became political ammunition. Critics of California's business environment seized on the Coca-Cola shutdowns as proof that high taxes, energy costs, and regulations were driving manufacturers away. Editorials framed the events as warning signs. Business groups renewed calls for tax relief and regulatory reform. Lawmakers were drawn into a growing public argument over whether the state was pushing employers out. For smaller towns, the impact was especially visible. When a major employer leaves, the loss is felt immediately, in schools, housing markets, and local services. A more complicated reality. Despite the intensity of the debate, state researchers urged caution. The same Public Policy Institute of California report emphasized that while manufacturing faces steep challenges, overall business departure rates remain consistent with national trends. For every high-profile closure, new companies continue to launch or expand within the state, particularly in high-growth sectors. Still, nuance rarely survives public debate. When a global brand closes a facility, the symbolic weight often outweighs the data, the governor's silence, and the political vacuum. State leadership responded carefully. Rather than issuing dramatic statements, officials reiterated California's core strengths: innovation, workforce depth, and economic scale. No direct rebuttal followed the Coca-Cola closures. That silence created a vacuum. Critics filled it, framing the lack of response as indifference or denial. Supporters argued that reacting to every closure would only legitimize exaggerated narratives. Either way, the closures became rallying points in an ongoing struggle over the state's economic identity. When headlines create their own reality. The Coca-Cola story was soon joined by another headline-grabbing controversy: claims that In-N-Out Burger was leaving California. Reports suggested the iconic chain was relocating its headquarters to Tennessee. Commentary exploded. Talk shows framed it as another iconic brand fleeing the state, but the details told a different story. The company's leadership clarified that while a new office was opening in Tennessee to support growth in the Southeast, California remained its operational core. Still, perception had already taken hold. Separating symbolism from substance, In-N-Out continues to operate hundreds of stores across California, far more than in any other state. Its manufacturing and distribution footprint remains deeply rooted locally. Supporters argue that the company's actions mirror a broader trend, expanding geographically without abandoning home bases. Tesla followed a similar path. While it moved its headquarters to Texas, much of its engineering and design work remains in California. These decisions are less about rejection and more about flexibility. What these stories really have in common: Coca-Cola, In-N-Out, Tesla. These stories differ in detail, but they share a common theme. Companies are not asking whether California is valuable. They are asking how much risk they can afford to carry in one place. High costs, regulatory complexity, and long-term uncertainty force even loyal brands to diversify operations. This does not mean California is being abandoned. It means it is being hedged against. The deeper question California faces. The real issue is not whether companies are leaving. It's whether California can adapt fast enough to remain competitive without sacrificing the policies that define it. California is not collapsing. It remains one of the world's largest and most dynamic economies. Yet the pressures facing manufacturers and legacy brands are real, and they are growing. What happens next will determine whether the state continues to attract long-term investment or slowly pushes it to the margins. This is not just a business story. It is a story about identity, priorities, and the future shape of California's economy, and the outcome is still being written. Environmental leadership, worker protections, and innovation have long been part of the state's identity. But so has opportunity. Balancing those forces is becoming harder, and when even the most deeply rooted brands begin to rethink their footprint, the signal is impossible to ignore. A state at an inflection point. Plant closures do not define an economy on their own, but they do reveal stress points.